I hope you all enjoyed the film. I love the way that Leana ends this film with the call to action and a question about the water in our local communities. And so over the next few minutes, we're going to learn some more about water locally as we have a chance to have a conversation with the filmmaker and local activists. At the JCC, we're committed to tackling hard issues as a community in an environment of civility and respect. And so we ask you to keep this in mind as we go through our discussion. It gives me a great honor to welcome our panelists. Feel free to come up. The filmmaker, Leana Hosea. This is Leana's first feature film, and this is the East Coast premiere of Thirst for Justice. So we were all really fortunate today to get a chance to see the film. I would like to welcome local environmentalist and social justice activist Yvette Jordan, who is a founding member of the Newark Education Workers Caucus, the new Caucus, and a high school history teacher. From the Natural Resources Defense Council, where she is a senior attorney and director, Urban Water, Healthy People and Thriving Communities Program, Joan Matthews. And our moderator, Rachel Watanabe-Batton, founder of Contradiction and Struggle, a production company dedicated to telling stories that reframe historical and cultural narratives. They're going to talk amongst themselves for a few minutes, and then you'll have a chance to ask some questions.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I didn't see you all earlier in the dark, but I'm with you in spirit. I think anyone who, I know that was quite an intense film, and we have, since this is about social justice, we have a lot of work to do, but anyone who wants to stretch and move their energy now for a few seconds is welcome to do so. This is not like school. First of all, thank you to JCC and to the Cinematters New York Social Justice Film Festival, and Cheryl Parker in particular for inviting us, as well as Leah Meyerhoff of Film Fatales, and Karima Parton, who's here tonight, also from Film Fatales. Is this too loud? I want to make sure I'm not... okay, all right, great. So one of the things that, I think is so amazing about this film is really, you begin and end with the connectivity through the water and the shamans in Greenland. And, this idea that we have, that hope is really what is going to get us, as well as, I think, some deep strategy that, our fellow panelists have really been utilizing. And I'd love to start first about talking a little bit about the film. Just to let you know, we're going to open it up to questions about halfway through, so if you have something in mind, please, keep them for a moment. So I know one of the things I want to just ask you, Leana, because it relates to also organizing, is how you found your subjects, the participants in the film, from, your Ojibwe elder, Mary, and the shamans, to, the subjects, Janine, and even the water examiners. Yeah.
I was doing a fellowship at the University of Michigan, and it was a great fellowship. We could do whatever subjects we want for mid-career journalists, and I did Native American literature, and my professor was Ojibwe, and he was like, oh my goodness, you're going to love my aunt, who's a water carrier, an Ojibwe water carrier. So I called her up, and she gave me a really hard time initially, what are your thoughts about the 4 elements? I thought I meant to be interviewing you. This is annoying. But no, she came round, and we're very close, and she's took me to Standing Rock and really welcomed me into her family, and was quite an inspiration, I guess, with the spiritual elements, because there does need to be hope. I think we have hope, and I think we need to be galvanized to do something. So that was, and obviously I'm spending a lot of time with, Native and Indigenous just communities here in America who are feeling. I think all religions have something about the sacredness of water, because water is life. So, and then it took me a while to find Janine, really, because obviously I went back. The film starts with my journey in 2010 when I first went to the Navajo reservation, and I was been looking for the right person, and I wanted someone that everyone could feel connected to, like a young mom dynamic. And, I just, I don't know, it was sort of kismet, as they say. I felt, I just saw her name in a newspaper. I contacted her, and she'd been looking for someone to make. The day before, she said, I want to make a film about, I want to be more involved in media, and then I called her. So.
Is that when you started to look at it, I guess you talk about it a little bit in the film, but when did you know you had to make this film? You were, you had a fellowship, you were, actively sort of pursuing your own career and, extending from your own experience as a journalist in the BBC. But when did you know that, okay, I've got to unite these stories, I think that, of these people, and move forward?
I could never forget, actually, the film, because Milton, the young kind of Navajo activist who showed me, he died. And all these things really touched me, and I could never forget. I came home from this short news trip and sort of immediately got a job in the Middle East and spent 3 years there covering revolution and war, and I kind of went on this other big journey, but I could never forget it, actually. It was, I don't know whether because I felt that I didn't really deliver. And then when, I heard about the Flint water crisis, and, and then this fellowship came up, and I thought, if I meet the right people, then I'm going to make a film. So I love documentaries, so...
Who was the first person who said, yes, I'll be in the film?
Janine.
Janine.
And I had to, Naira never quite said yes. So I just kept on following her. Obviously she did say yes. But it took a while for Janine as well to open up to me and to trust me. I'm an English outsider. There's a lot of pain on the Navajo community and Indigenous communities, and in Flint, people are sick of the media, they're sick of being misportrayed or kind of stereotype, white trash, or the noble savage, or whatever the stereotype is. And I was really not wanting to do any of that. Let's get beyond the stereotypes. Let's connect these communities, because actually, as it's Martin Luther King Weekend, it's kind of the whole spirit of that Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah. In the spirit of that, I think the connectivity, we should bring you, Joan, and Yvette into the discussion, because I think for those of you who don't know, the two work together. And so I'd love to sort of, one of the things in the film that's very clear is that the indiscriminate nature, right, of this water contamination and pollution, but whether it's indigenous communities in rural settings or urban, Flint, Newark, whatever's happening in our own pipelines here in Manhattan, it's not remote. And you two have worked together, and I'd love you to tell us a little bit about, sort of your own work in Newark, and how you came to work together and sue the city.
Sure. And I think one of the things that is not portrayed in the film, and I understand it, and thank you so much for this film. It's amazing. I'm going to be thinking a lot about this film. The story that you are telling and the connectivity is just really pretty amazing. One thing that's not in there, and I'm totally fine with it, are the lawyers, right? So I'm happy to work for an organization called the Natural Resources Defense Council, and there are amazing lawyers there. I'm a lawyer, but I work on program, but the litigation attorneys are amazing. They were there in Flint. They're there in Newark. And so getting the water distribution in Flint was not easy. And there was a court order that made that happen and made it and improved it. There was a court order that set a timeline for replacing the lead service lines in 3 years, which is amazing. So the lawyers were there to really push this. And now we're in Newark. And again, I'm not on that litigation team, but I am a huge fan of Yvette's because she has been there and she's going to tell her story to you. And she is really pushing it, not just for herself, but for her community. And so maybe it would be a good time to turn over to Yvette, Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, Yvette, you're a teacher and an activist, organizer, and we really would love to talk about how you got involved in the first place, being on the front lines in many ways for all of us. And, well, I'll ask you after that. Let me start with there.
First of all, I want to thank JCC and Cheryl Parker for actually inviting me here and including me in this important event. And this film was just so powerful. Yeah, really it was. Yeah. But I want to talk a little bit about how I got involved. And NRDC, as you mentioned, was extremely active, not only in Flint, however, if you know anything about NRDC, they are a global organization fighting for environmental justice. And what happened in Newark, for myself in particular, in February of 18, is I am a member of Newark Education Workers Caucus, and it's a group of educators such as myself who fight for rights of educators and students and their families. So it's a little more than a union, although I'm on our union's executive board also. We were approached in February of 18 by lawyers from NRDC who informed us, I don't know if you know, there's lead in your water. And we said, what are you talking about? So they said that unfortunately there was a lead exceedance and it has happened over a period, and we informed your mayor about this in September of 17 through a letter. And the letter was signed by several organizations, a couple of them local chapters of civil rights organizations you probably know, however, will remain nameless, as well as local CBOs. So what happened in the next 3 months was there was a larger exceedance of lead. And they said, okay, we think something should happen since city administration was actually doing nothing or following up from the letter. So in February, when they approached us, they said, we're thinking of suing on a federal level and need a plaintiff. Would you serve as a plaintiff? So knowing our mission, we said, of course we will. So unfortunately, though, these other signatories on this original letter in September of 17 would not step up and serve as a plaintiff. You can imagine why, I guess, unfortunately. So since then, we are the plaintiff. It is Newark Education Workers Caucus et al., and et al. Is NRDC. And we are the plaintiff in the federal lawsuit against City of Newark and State of New Jersey. So a part of that is replacement, suing for two things actually, and that is lead service line replacement as well as education for our residents, and education in terms of filters. And in your film, we saw about filters, and some of the people were saying filters don't work, and we don't know why you're even doing that. So we have filters, and in management of filters, it is extremely challenging. So you would assume, okay, you hook up a filter on your faucet and everything's okay. It's not. You've got to flush your water for 5 minutes. However, if I'm a mom and my kid is screaming for water at 2 a.m. and I've got to make formula, I've got to flush it first. What, are you kidding me? So there are several issues such as this where education, it really is imperative. And unfortunately, we don't feel our city is doing that. So myself, as well as some others, are screaming about that, serving as activists, and hopefully are leading a charge so that others will rise up. I do want to say, before you ask me another question, or any of us, about the importance of self-advocacy. So prior to this, I was writing a book about self-advocacy, since I'm a teacher in an urban district and I see so many parents aren't advocating for the basic rights. So when this happened, I said, okay, here is an opportunity to really impart some education and let folks know the importance of advocating for yourself. So my challenge and others who are advocating, I'm sure not only in Newark, however, in a myriad of areas where communities of color in particular, or those who are disenfranchised, aren't accustomed to rising up and speaking for themselves, is really a challenge. So that's what I am advocating for.
I think that ties in very well to the shaman's words to realize your own beauty, spiritual revolution, and that's, I think the power that you've shown that exists when you do collectively come together and organize and love your own community and advocate for yourselves is very clear, whether it's in the work you're doing with New Caucus in Newark, which is very, very immediate. We can all, later we'll talk about the things that they actually need help with that are, that each one of us can do and take steps in our own communities, I think. I do think that teachers are actually, I come from a family of educators, and I used to go door to door in the Lower East Side with my mother and dad. So I think, whether it's factory workers or teachers, they're the ones most exposed and also most aware and most charged with keeping everyone safe and moving the next generation forward. So I do think we should never underestimate our students, our teachers, the assistant secretaries, the, person in the street because we are actually our own humanity. And, it's the people, right? We the people united. It's just always about that. So, I think one of the things we talked about, and we want to bring in, I think, the legal aspects, because there's like a hocus pocus that you see throughout this film, right? The double speak of all the officials, whether they're the sheriffs in Standing Rock, talking about the use of force in this most obscure way with these they're not water cannons, it's not free. And to the yellow cake, that it's safe to eat. I mean, it's not very toxic. It's crazy, and but yet they get away with it. And so I think,
it sounds funny,
Right.
and I'm laughing, but it's actually not funny because it's how they get away with it. Yeah, and they're doing it, and it's just,
So, you do it in the film, but I think let's talk about how do you deal with this reality that when you go in to do the struggles and ask the questions?
Right. Well, as lawyers, we have a job to do. And so, there are two stories, right? And so, each side will tell a story. And, we like to think that our story is correct, right? Representing people, communities, hiring the experts who will, give the scientific basis, provide the data. So, and it's a battle when you're in court. And I have to say that the judge in Flint was great. The judge in the Newark litigation is a little different. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I think that the message of, I took away a message of hope from the film, that you can organize, you can have your voices heard. You may not always be successful, but you can organize. Don't do this yourself. My program work recently has been focusing on lead in drinking water in schools. And in fact, Newark came to light. The canary in the coal mine were the lead levels in schools. And then the lead levels in residences came to light. So parents are concerned. So I have a lead issue. If I'm in Flint or Newark, I have a lead issue at home. What's going on in school? And maybe in the beginning in Newark, oh, we have a lead issue in school. What's going on at home? And so parents do have those questions. I started to look at that a couple of years ago because New York State has a law. It was the first in the nation to have a law to require mandatory testing for lead in drinking water and in public schools. I'm working now to strengthen that law because now that we have the data, over 82% of schools in New York State, New York City, and upstate have at least one drinking water outlet that is over the action level, where a school has to do something, okay? So what we advise parents to do is start to ask questions. Teachers teach because they love kids. Talk to the teacher. School nurses are there because they love kids. Talk to the school nurse if your school has one. Talk to the principal. I mean, schools are community, right? And so build on that community, leverage that community, get some other parents together and say, I've been looking into this and I've been doing some research about this. And let's see if we can find out what's happening in our school. Or maybe you already know what's happening in your school and you want to do something about it. Ask questions. And so I think that's the message from the film, is one of hope and one of organizing and one of keep pushing, not just taking the first answer, but keep pushing for other answers.
Well, in a way, it's about your storytelling, right? And we're in JCC, so we are a community, right? And it's very much, as a journalist, right? That you're telling stories. As a teacher, every day you're getting up and telling stories, really engaging your students. And it is really the cultural hegemony, right? If we don't tell these stories and get, a light on the activism, whether it's people, doing very grassroots things, whether it's civil disobedience, these kind of legal actions, support one another, I do think that then we're sort of invisible because you are battling the image and the media in a global context. We're going to open it up in a minute because I know that probably many of you have questions for each of them, so I'd love to give you that opportunity. One of the things that I think to frame it is, in addition to the, all the abandoned mines, uranium mines, however many, 15,000, then it seemed like maybe even more. I think about the water treatment plants here, whether it's over by Riverbank, which was great. It's wonderful we have this beautiful track, but the instances of cancer are the highest in that neighborhood. When you think about people near Con Ed who grew up by 110th Street, not that far, any of those instances, those neighborhoods have higher instances of cancer. And so these sort of toxicity, whether it's our pipes or other things, are in fact, we live on an island. So, between rivers. And so this whole film is about the imagery of the rivers, this connectivity. So I do think that, we're never far, right, from this affecting us personally. And I'm sure that it's just a matter of time before more and more of these instances surface. Obviously, 9/11 awoke people for those contaminants here. Did you want to add something? I see you sort of looking, Yvette, about... No? Okay. All right. So does anyone have a burning question? Yeah, I'm going to have some, yes, I like that.
I believe there's a new governor in Michigan since the beginning of 2019. Has the situation improved at all for Flint?
Gretchen Whitmer. She has she closed down the criminal investigations to re-examine them all. They say that they've got a lot more avenues to explore, and I'll let you, maybe you can talk a little bit more. But on a personal level, Christina has she's got a lot more ill, actually. I've seen her deteriorate a lot. I mean, it was funny, after she stopped breastfeeding, I think she really went downhill. She's got all sorts of, problems. There's a lot of, as a lot of Flint residents do, and they don't have all the health care, and then they feel that, they don't trust the politicians, so I suppose but there is lead replacement happening of the pipes, but not in people's homes. So, people are like, well, if I had lead in my homes and the water's corroded my pipes, and the value of my house has gone down, and I've lost my job, and now I'm really ill. How am I going to cope with this? How am I going to pay for all this pipe replacement? So there's still a lot of challenges, and people there. I mean, it was tough. A lot of people are quite depressed by the whole thing, struggling.
There are, yes, new governor, new attorney general, both Dems, both women. The legislature is same old, but Michigan did pass the most stringent lead and copper rule in the nation. Mm-hmm. And this is happening because of inaction at the federal level. So I think to answer your question, yes, things are improving. The lead service line replacement is almost complete. Does everybody know what a lead service line is? I mean, we keep talking about that. It's the pipe that comes from the water line from the street. It's the pipe that goes into your home. That's a lead service line. They're small because they go to homes. They're not in apartment buildings. They're not in schools, bigger buildings, but they go into homes. And then when the water is corrosive that's coming in, it dislodges the lead that's in those pipes, and then it comes out through the water. Now, I mentioned lead in drinking water in schools. I just want to, clarify something for you, because I just said there are no lead service lines in schools. So how does the lead get into the water in schools? It's in the plumbing. It's in the fixtures. It can either come out the faucet by ordinary just coursing through and flaking off, or because the water that's coming into a school is corrosive, and then it just kind of accelerates it. So I just want to make sure that you all know that.
I've seen it firsthand on walls in my building. Yes, young lady in the middle right here. Oh, you have I'm sorry, I didn't see. You had it already? Yes, sir.
Hi. I don't have a burning question, but I have a burning statement. I would like to really compliment you on an extraordinary documentary.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. It means a lot.
In terms of raising this issue in the hierarchy of all the social justice issues we deal with, I mean, you've really elevated it to the level that tomorrow I'm actually going to go get a new water system for my place. So absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that you tied it into two different communities in different parts of the country clearly points out to the issue that we really need to maybe start calling it for what it is. And we say greed, but it's really a function of capitalism. And when we really, so I just want to say that without getting into a monologue of capitalism. So great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think there's a reason these things are systemic. It's a system, right?
I mean, I just wanted to just say that the IMF did this report last year, and 85% of state subsidies globally go straight to fossil fuel companies. That's a lot, I thought. It depends what we want to spend our money on.
Yeah, the global mining of our resources, right, is at a cost. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what thoughts any of you may have about how we address this on a federal level with people in Congress, and we're also in the middle of preparing for a presidential election in this country. And, there are a number of candidates who are vying for our votes, and I think this also offers an opportunity to really get in front of them and let them know what's truly important for us. So any ideas you may have to, get in touch with, my experience has been that it's more challenging to get in touch with our federal representatives than on a local level. So any thoughts in terms of reaching out effectively to them, and also with the presidential candidates as well?
I'm not the American, but I mean, the only thing I have to say is that I mean, Bernie Sanders has put forward a Water Act bill, like supported by, but, I'm not partisan, and I don't feel that I'm the right person to answer this one.
There are a number of water bills floating around Congress, and there are a lot of water champions in Congress, but things just don't seem to happen, so, especially in the Senate. So I'm a 501c3, so that's all I'm going to say about that.
I think we look at, this isn't just, in its own isolation. Think about the privatization of water that happened under Reagan and Thatcher, which is, the great, you make the great point, right?
In the UK, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how Nestle can own the Great Lakes.
Right.
I think this is a very, this isn't just an isolated thing about water, right? We have to look at our courts. We have to look at, what's the increased power of corporations over us and our human value. I mean, they're all intersectional. And I think that even whether it's, universities, they're all thinking about how do you approach this interdisciplinarily, and and so how do we impact? I mean, that's, and thinking about resources, how are all these things affecting one another? How are your taxes? And again, to capitalism, right? The function of how money is spread around and valued over human life.
And I think the ecology and the rivers are important, and biodiversity really improves like the health of the water, and just think we're introducing wolves and beavers even. So I think, I think there's many ways to get active around the issue.
Yes, of course. And, whether it's eating more or less meat, I mean, I think we can have, everybody has their entry point in. Do we have time for another question? Okay. Yes.
Hi. I just had like a quick question. How can I help as a student? Like, how can I help people in Michigan and like work with them when I'm like here? And how does it affect me?
Perfect question.
I think I'll take that.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm happy are you a high school or college student? Okay, a high school student. Well, first of all, I want to applaud you even for speaking up. I know it's not easy to do that as a student. But for you to help Flint or other areas experiencing a problem, I think it's good for you to work with your peers, whether it is social media. And I'll give you an example. I'm a history teacher, and so I teach social justice also, and one of my units was on environmental justice. So what I did was I paired a group of students in my classes as well as in student government with a youth organization in Flint, and they're called the Flint Youth Justice League. And we had a video conference, and it was great. And they have so many ideas and said, well, I know what you're experiencing in Newark. So if you need help in terms of social media, we will do that. So I think you can reach out in terms of social media and keep the message alive through Twitter or what's that other thing you all use? TikTok? Yeah, yes. Snapchat, whatever it is. Twitter and me is just, okay. I'm still on Facebook. So, but I think whatever social media your demographic is using is important. And also, if you want a contact, see me afterwards and I'll share a contact for myself as well as in Flint in terms of young people.
Yeah. And yes, Leana, I think, we're going to be wrapping it up, but why don't it would be great, since we're sharing social media, how do people keep in touch with the film and with you, and also supporting, I know you have To the Last Drop on Facebook and a few other things on your website, Thirst for Justice.
Yeah, no, please keep in touch with me. Mainly Twitter, I guess I'm that age, at Leana Hosea, so it's just my name. And, you know, I want to be able to, you know, have the film used for local community screenings, and maybe there's a, you know, we can think of a way as a fundraiser for, you know, whatever local water, clean water, or maybe it's in Newark if you want to give to Newark, because it's not just about Flint and the Navajo. It's everywhere. And there's a new global campaign, Claim Your Water Rights. And so that's a way of connecting on Twitter with, you know, people all over the world who are, you know, trying to raise awareness about their water rights. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. This was really, really helpful, really interesting. I will have for all, you'll be hearing from me in the next day or so. I'll be sending all of you information on ways to get involved. And I want to encourage you, if you want to talk more about this, we have a session across the hall in just a moment in the classroom 1 across the hall. And please join us. Thanks again. We have films all week until through tomorrow, and look forward to seeing you at some of them. Thank you.